When I woke up, there was a nice fog drifting over northern Orlando. So I grabbed my Fujifilm X100v and I headed to Cranes Roost Park to try and make some nice, moody morning photos. I wasn't disappointed, but I thought I should head downtown to see if I could capture some more of the mood in an urban environment. So I jumped on the expressway, armed only with my Fuji and my iPhone 15 Pro Max. As I headed downtown, the sky still looked promising as the fog was still drifting over the city. But as I pulled into my favorite parking place, it had all lifted and turned into a bright and sunny Tuesday morning.
파란 하늘에 핑크빛 구름 네 손에 나의 계절 chocolate I'm feeling so good 눈에 보이는 모든 게 예뻐 You already made my day 다가와서 꽉 안아줄 때 충전되는 이 느낌 너와 함께라면 어디든 좋아 지금 이대로면 멈춰도 좋아 뚜렷한 기억 처음 손잡은 그날 누구 건지 모를 promise wait we'll never let go 헤어지기가 아쉬운 나날들 Oh, you're my sunny day 손을 잡아 너의 주머니에 넣는 나를 바라봐 너와 함께라면 어디든 좋아
So I got a real kick out of making this little open that is just a menu of the chapter times that I'll fill in when I'm done. The interesting thing about doing this one was I couldn't figure out a way to align all the text so that it would be at least halfway presentable. So I jumped over to Illustrator and I made this grid that I just put underneath it so that I'd have something to kind of eyeball. And I think it worked pretty well. I was pretty happy with it. So the first shot of the morning was actually one of the first shots I took, which is kind of unusual for me because I usually need a few warm-up shots. But I really like this shot. I like the fact that he's in silhouette and the haze in the background and the sort of blurry, you kind of think you might know what it says. I think that really works well when coupled with the next shot, which is of course a close-up. And then that leads into a little bit brighter shot where you can read the sign a little bit better, but it's still a bit out of focus. And then the whole shot with the leading lines going back into the background and the girl in the pink. I think that just kind of worked. I like that. Now this shot was kind of like, if I could have only gotten one shot Tuesday, this would have been it. It kind of signifies the whole idea of a foggy morning, the lone figure and the haze and the, of course, black and white kind of feel. So I just made it black and white in Lightroom. Now this one's kind of just, I don't know, it's a bridge shot. Literally of kind of like these little barge platforms that they put the fireworks on for the 4th of July and all that. And there's normally some birds on them, but not this morning. And I just kind of used it to bridge into this shot, which I wanted to kind of establish where I was at. The hazy background just worked for me, and the colors, of course. And I believe in Lightroom, I kind of popped that red a little bit, brought the luminance down and the saturation up. So this shot starts off in black and white, and then the saturation increases. And I did that in Final Cut. And these little spider webs were all along that walkway. And if you look at this walkway, they were in the distance of the walkway, you know. They were like down in there, you know. So I thought that was cool. So let me go ahead and fit to canvas to get back to the right size there. Okay, so where were we? Yeah, so I just thought that was neat. That gives us a good segue into the trip downtown. And I usually have like my X100v or some sort of small camera that I normally would shoot this with. But today all I have was my iPhone 15 Pro Max. And I've been kind of anxious to try it out, doing some video with it after all the great reviews it's been getting. I didn't have an external drive, so I just shot in 4K 30, but I shot ProRes and Log. So that's Apple Log. And I got to say, I was pleased with how it looked. I was amazed, actually, by how it looked. And I just have a little bracket under my rear view mirror that I normally keep my phone on, no matter what phone I have, with my map program on it. And so I just use that same bracket and just turn the camera on and let it roll. Then I spent quite a lot of time in this little transition here. It's it's just a cross dissolve, but trying to get it to match so that it would make sense coming into this time lapse coming up. Kind of where it just fades away and it's almost not noticeable. Now, on my phone, I have a bunch of shortcuts to call up different modes of the camera, so I don't have to mess around with it. And I use one of those shortcuts while I was stopped at that light to simply put it into the time-lapse mode. Now this one, I kind of wish I had my aperture set a little higher so that this sculpture here would be in better focus. But as you can see, it's not quite in focus. I'll remember that for next time. Let's get back to fit to canvas. Now this shot is the iPhone in video mode, just holding it with two hands and the ultra wide angle lens, making sure my thumb or my finger isn't in the shot, which I've got a few that I didn't use because of that. Now this little effect here, I really wanted to emphasize the vertical aspect of this scene. So that's why I decided to use these. And these are all, I believe, yes, they're all iPhone images. And what I tried to do was get the right image to come into focus as it completes its move. So I think I just used a blur effect and then I animated the blur effect. And I did the opposite with the background. So you see the building in the background there in the little window between the two panes there and the little opening, and then it gets blurrier as the final shot gets more in focus. And this again was another iPhone video, obviously playing with the contrast and the black point to get that more of a photo saturated look. I really like the reflection of the building. I really like those reflections there on Orange Avenue with all the glass. And by the way, those were shot 4K 30, just storing right onto the phone since I didn't have an external drive with me. If I would have, I'd have probably shot them in 60 so I could have slowed them down. Now this was another iPhone shot, and I probably am a little bit overdoing it with the effects here, but I was trying to draw your eye up to the sun here. And by the way, I went ahead and did focus and exposure lock on this shot. I set the focus and exposure for the little ball there with the sun behind it, and then did the move, so I was able to get that to work, and I was amazed at the dynamic range that it actually let me do that. Now this is just a montage of the same shot from the X100v, flipped and positioned to do that. And I actually had put this little flash and a little sweep in there to kind of emphasize that sunny day thing. Again, maybe I'm overdoing it with the effects, but I had a good time doing it. Same thing with the bus. I used the Aurora again, and I put a mask on it so it would only show in that lower quadrant. Went into this shot, which was another iPhone motion shot, and to yet another iPhone motion shot, all building up to this shot from the Fuji. And I think I had it just a little bit overexposed, a little bit too punched, but overall I like the feel of it. I just wish that I would have had a little more room to maybe pull the detail, and then the bus leaving, of course. This was another iPhone shot. I kind of got really into doing these little moves, trying to give you a point of view of what I was seeing to make the picture. And to yet another iPhone shot, kind of building up into this shot of the logo on the door, and another little glitzy effect. Back to another iPhone movie doing the tilt to a Fuji shot there. And again, the color, the saturation, and I did not have my mist filter on, by the way. I liked that look though. Then back to another tilt shot from the iPhone, and another iPhone shot showing off that beautiful architecture of that building. And I was really kind of getting into the light and the shadow on the wall of the building there. I just thought that looked really good. That's another shot from the Fuji camera that I put a move on here in Final Cut to get that pullback. This is yet another iPhone pan here into a Fuji still, and then another Fuji still to get that kind of simulation of motion. And then a little black and white treatment. And I did that to lead into this next shot, which is this gentleman watching all of the people taking their pictures. It was the day before Halloween, so, or maybe it was Halloween day, I can't remember, but a lot of people were kind of dressed up in costumes and watching all the people take selfies and stuff. And I pulled the color into him, and I did that move in Final Cut. And then into this shot, which the scaffolding down there on the red brick sidewalk was just so cool with the shadows. And I probably spent an inordinate amount of time goofing around with this, but I really did like the look. And that little sequence was accidental. I just happened to do a burst. And when I saw those, I thought, you know what, I'm going to animate those. So I think that worked out. My wife really kind of likes this sequence here. And you know what they say, happy wife, happy life. So I thought I'd leave it in. And I like it too. I think it's cool looking. And then, you know, kind of focusing more on the shadows. So I thought when I was shooting this with my iPhone to kind of come down to the shadows and then use the Fuji to try and get some stills. So that's what I did here. Now that's the Fuji. I thought I'd, you know, kind of get some action in the shot when this guy walks by in his blue shoes. And I blew that out a little bit in Lightroom, trying to keep that same kind of grade all the way through this project. Slightly blown out look. And of course the move I did in Final Cut. Now this sequence I thought was really cool as well. And I didn't have a burst of this, so I faked it. I just, you know, cropped it into different shots and then edited them together. And again, all moves in Final Cut. Now this was a kind of a pan tilt gyro move, whatever you want to call it, with the iPhone. And again, I cranked it to get it more contrasty than it was just using the lookup table alone. Now that's a cut into a Fuji shot that I shot, I believe, vertically, and then just filled the frame in post and did that tilt on it. And I played around with this quite a bit. I kind of felt like there was something there, although there wasn't anything there at the time. It was just kind of abandoned. But I love that sign of the sidebar, and I've used it in several of my other videos about nighttime street photography downtown. But I'm glad I took it because later I was able to get that shot, which I punched in Lightroom to emphasize the color of the yellow. It was fun to kind of match it with the same curve there in the distance. And all I did was just a freeze frame there and then dissolved into the still from the Fuji. So the left side is the iPhone camera and the right side is the Fuji X100v. Now this is of course a Fuji shot in focus, and then the move in Final Cut. This, I believe, was a pano shot, definitely from the iPhone. I had a shot from the Fuji of the sign outside, so I put them together, and I think that was a screen. Yeah, I had it screen 100%. And I should have animated that. That would have been kind of cool. Maybe I'll go back and do that. Okay, anyway, keep going. Oh yeah, that was so good. I got to tell you, that was great. And the jerk chicken, by the way, was awesome as well. I love this one. I just love this one, and I love the comedy in it, because you see the elf is like got that photobomb look on his face, out of focus because I was focusing on the girl and trying to get the truck in the background, and she is obviously interested in the guy on the billboard on the side of that truck, and he's oblivious to that, just kind of going, hey, look at this. He's taking our picture. Now, unfortunately, that same truck was getting a ticket from parking enforcement. This is obviously from the Fuji and blown out in Lightroom. Now, this was a sign inside the jerk chicken place. By the way, it's right there on Orange Avenue, just south of the cathedral, the jerk chicken place. It was really good. And there was a sign there on the counter that says, "I'm sorry about what I said when I was hungry," which really applies to me more than I like to admit. So I took this shot with the Fuji, and I did a motion blur when I took the shot intentionally to kind of emphasize, like, this is how you feel when you're hungry, right? And then another angle to the resolve shot, which I put the move on in Final Cut. So that little sequence, I just really kind of like that. Back to this shot. Now this time it's with the iPhone again. I was very interested in this. That is a reflection of that mural that was at the beginning. It's a reflection in the cigar bar window, which I hadn't noticed before. So you'll be betting that I'll be paying more attention to that on future little projects. I tried something here in camera on the iPhone. Lo and behold, it kind of worked. And that was a live zoom from wide to, I think, 5 times while I was recording. And it pulled it off pretty well. Boom. So it was like, really? I remember that. Nice little trick to have up your sleeve. And I was leading into this sign that I'd seen earlier that said, "Look both ways." And I didn't capture it when I saw it the first time. So I came back around to get it, and it took me forever to find it. That is something I want to talk about on how I use shortcuts on my phone to mark locations of points of interest very quickly. And of course the timing with the bus. So I took this bus then, and in Final Cut I slowed it way down, and since it was only shot in 30 and I slowed it down enough to where I could get it to stutter, which is what I was kind of looking for. And of course that led to the sign, which I use that same in-camera zoom trick. And then of course now this is from the Fuji. And that sequence was done from a burst shot in the Fuji. Those are, I believe, yeah, those are all Fuji shots. And then I put a cross dissolve over that marquee effect just to kind of soften it up a little bit. And again, I'll talk about that in the next chapter when I kind of dig deeper into the editing experience on the iPad. This was one of the first shots I got downtown. All the different colored light bulbs up there, it just made it really neat up against that blue sky. Now this was a Fuji shot as well, and I believe I shot it vertically so I could just tilt up in post. And then finishing off with a panorama that I made on the iPhone, and it was a pano that I just panned. I panned the pano in post. I panned the pano in post to get that move. And that's it. Now let's talk about editing. You know, I don't quite know where to start with this chapter because I thought this was going to be all about portability. I've worked on this project out here on the porch. I've worked on it in bed. I've worked on it while watching TV. I worked on it while waiting in the car for my wife. And that's all very cool. But it's dawned on me that kind of the real cool is that touch interface. After, you know, getting a little bit of the hang of it, it's just so cool to be able to just touch things and drag to zoom, and the little scroll wheel is just awesome. I found out this morning there's going to be some updates coming soon, which will, I think, make it even better, because it sounds like it's going to give us a little more control over some of the details, especially making compound clips or being able to group complex sequences together. I try to consolidate everything onto my solid-state drive, even though for this project in particular, I could just wait for iCloud to sync the videos I shot on my phone or use AirDrop if I'm in a hurry. Then once they're in photos on the iPad, I could just import them straight into Final Cut Pro. However, having an iPhone 15 with the USB-C interface makes moving media from the phone to the solid-state drive really straightforward. While this method may seem to be a little bit redundant, there are a couple of advantages. One is to pre-edit clips while they're still on your phone in photos, so you're not moving things you don't need. And another being able to put it in a specific folder, which makes batch importing into Final Cut for iPad easier. And another being able to rename the clip. This is especially handy if you do screen recording, making it a lot easier to spot once it's in Final Cut. When I first downloaded Final Cut Pro for iPad, I was a little bit overwhelmed, so I went up here to the three little dots and saw video tutorials, and I tell you, it really helped me get up to speed quickly. I can't recommend them enough. The first little tip I'd like to share is using a grid to align text. So when I made this little open here, I wanted to make sure all of my text was aligned. And I don't believe there's a tool inside of Final Cut that allows that. So I jumped over to Illustrator and I made a grid. Let me enable that real quick. I have it sitting here as a lane, and I'll just tap and hold and then hit enable so you can see it. And then making the viewer larger. Make sure I'm still in fit to canvas. I am. Okay, I could just tap on whatever I wanted to adjust. Let's say I didn't like where fog and sun was. I can just tap on it, carefully grab it, and move it around to get it exactly where I want. I can do that better with my finger, actually. So right there, let's say. Once I got everything all lined up, I just turned off the grid. Now, one thing about the player that's really cool, let me enable that again, is that inside the player you can pinch to change the zoom of the player itself. So if you wanted to get in real close, you got to be careful that you don't accidentally select some of the content when you're moving the player around. But like, let's say I wanted to get really tight in there and then select my content. I can carefully adjust it a little more precisely. And then to get back, I'll turn the inspector back off. To get back to my correct screen size, I can just tap over here and hit fit to canvas. And then I'm back on my screen size. My next tip is on using the Ken Burns effect. Let me play this little sequence here. Okay, so I had this shot right here, which is a static shot, but I wanted to do a move on it, but I wanted to establish it first. And I like using Ken Burns because if I change the length of the clip, the Ken Burns animation changes with it, so I don't have to go back and reanimate it. I also like the ballistics of the Ken Burns look. So the way I did that is I just split this clip right here and I put a dissolve, and then on the second half of that clip I went to my crop tools, went to Ken Burns, and then made sure that my starting crop was full screen, and then I adjusted my ending crop. And you can do that, by the way, just by grabbing the edges of the outlines there. Let me undo that. So that gives me that nice little effect. Okay, so I can be accused of maybe getting a little overzealous with effects, but I had a good time doing it. And on this little tip, I wanted to talk about using these generators that are in the library here. This one's called Aurora. I think it's that one, Aurora 1. And what I did here was turn on the inspector. I put the blend mode in soft light. I left the color conversion in automatic. The color conversion gets really important a little bit later on, and I'll show you why. And then I applied a shape mask, and I did the shape mask to keep the reflections from the Aurora kind of on the pavement and just a little bit on the bus. I also did a little bit of color adjustments here, bringing the exposure down, messing around with the brightness just a little bit, and the saturation to kind of get the look I wanted. So I think it's kind of neat that you can take those generators and put effects on them, color manage them. You can't speed them up or slow them down, unfortunately, but I found that handy, and I may have overused it 2 or 3 times. And then another little trick I did a few times. I wanted to use this divide effect here, but it's just a little too harsh for me. So what I did is I tapped and held on that cut and I copied it, and then I got to the start of the clip, tapped up here in an empty area, pressed here, and I hit paste to playhead. I'm not going to do it now because I've already put it in there. Then I put a cross dissolve on it, and I'm going to go ahead and disable this to show you why I did it. If I didn't do that, I don't like that where it shows all the lines and then it kind of zooms out. So by putting that dissolve on there, I eliminated that zoom out. And I use little tricks like that where you just do a compound transition on several places during this video. I mentioned about the color conversion being really important, and I wanted to show you why in this little sequence. So what I had here was this move, which was kind of boring by itself, but I really like that sidebar sign. So I stopped it by adding a freeze frame right here, and then I dissolved this photo over it. Now, why color conversion is important is when you make a freeze frame, it normally defaults to automatic. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in automatic now. And you see that there is a level change. So left uncorrected, it looks like this, where you really see that change. So I discovered that if you go into your color conversion, choose manually, and then just say none, it seems to solve the problem. That took me a little while to find out. Well, that wraps it up. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're so inclined, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.